The brass clock above the host stand read 8:47 p.m. when Amara Chen felt the first droplets of ice water hit her shoulders. She had been reaching across table 14 to refill wine glasses, her movements practiced and efficient after 4 years of serving at Sterling Heights restaurant. The shock of cold made her flinch, but she recovered quickly. Straightening, with the bottle still balanced perfectly in her right hand, Sterling Whitmore III lounged in his chair, swirling the contents of his tumbler with deliberate laziness. His platinum cufflinks caught the amber light from the wall sconces as he smirked at his companions. The ice cubes in his glass clinked mockingly, several now missing from their original count. "Terribly sorry," he drawled, not sounding sorry at all. "These hands get so clumsy after the third scotch." His 3 dinner companions erupted in laughter. Duncan Hayes, a hedge fund manager with slicked hair and calculating eyes, leaned forward with interest. Preston Vale, younger but equally polished, adjusted his designer watch and grinned. Garrett Fox, the bulkiest of the group, slapped the table hard enough to rattle silverware. Amara kept her expression neutral, years of practice allowing her to swallow the humiliation rising in her throat. She was 26 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail and brown eyes that revealed nothing of the exhaustion constantly pulling at her bones. Her uniform was immaculate because it had to be. Everything about her presentation was careful, controlled, because in places like Sterling Heights, servers who showed weakness became targets. "No problem at all, sir," she replied evenly, her voice pleasant but distant. "I'll bring you fresh napkins." As she turned toward the service station, she heard Preston's stage whisper carry across the dining room. "Look how eager she is to please. Must be desperate for those tips." More laughter followed. Amara's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but she continued walking. The marble floor felt cold beneath her non-slip shoes, each step measured and deliberate. Around her, other diners pretended not to notice. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed mildly entertained. None intervened. This was not Amara's first encounter with entitled cruelty. Sterling Heights catered to the wealthy, the powerful, and the self-important. She had learned to navigate their moods, deflect their inappropriate comments, and smile through their condescension. What choice did she have? Her father, David Chen, sat at home in their small apartment 15 blocks away. 3 years ago, a machinery malfunction at the textile factory where he worked had crushed his spine, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. Workers' compensation covered some expenses, but physical therapy, specialized equipment, and mounting medical bills consumed everything. Amara's mother had died when she was 12. There was no one else. So Amara worked. She served breakfast shifts at a downtown diner from 6 to 11. She worked Sterling Heights from 5 to midnight. On weekends, she picked up catering gigs. Sleep happened in fragments. Dreams had become luxuries she could not afford. At the service station, she collected fresh linens and composed herself. Her reflection in the polished chrome coffee dispenser showed dark circles beneath her eyes that makeup could not quite hide. She was thin, too thin, because eating took time and money she did not have. But her uniform was pressed, her hair neat, her expression professionally pleasant. When she returned to table 14, Sterling had ordered another round of drinks. The 4 men were deep in conversation about stock portfolios and vacation homes, speaking loudly enough for surrounding tables to hear. Amara distributed the napkins silently, hoping to escape notice. Duncan Hayes had other plans. As she bent to retrieve a fallen fork, he shifted his chair backward abruptly. The heavy wood caught her hip, sending pain shooting through her side. She stumbled but caught herself against the table edge, the fork still gripped in her hand. "Watch where you're going," Duncan said coldly, as if she had been at fault. "These chairs are expensive. My apologies," Amara managed, straightening carefully. The pain in her hip throbbed, but she ignored it, had become expert at ignoring pain. Garrett leaned back, appraising her with open disdain. "Tell me something, sweetheart. Do you enjoy this? Serving people who are better than you?" The question hung in the air like poison. Amara met his gaze directly, something she rarely did with difficult customers, but tonight something inside her was fracturing. "I enjoy supporting my families, sir. Will there be anything else? Supporting your family, Preston repeated mockingly. How noble. What does a job like this pay anyway? $10 an hour? 12? Must be quite the come down, Sterling added, examining his nails with exaggerated interest. I imagine you had bigger dreams once. College, maybe? Career ambitions? Now look at you, fetching drinks and cleaning up after your betters. Amara's hands trembled slightly. She clasped them behind her back, refusing to let these men see how deeply their words cut. They were not wrong. She had dreamed once. Before her father's accident, she had been studying business administration at community college, working toward a degree that might lift her family into stability. Those dreams had evaporated the moment hospital bills began arriving. Everyone has their struggles, she said quietly, hating how weak her voice sounded. If you gentlemen need anything else, please let me know. As she turned away for the second time, Sterling pulled a breadstick from the basket and tossed it. The projectile struck her shoulder blade and fell to the floor with a soft thud. The gesture was so deliberately childish, so calculated to humiliate, that Amara felt something inside her chest crack. She bent to retrieve the breadstick, her face burning with shame. Around her, the restaurant had gone completely silent. Every diner, every server, every busboy watched. This was her life laid bare for public consumption. This was what poverty looked like when wealth decided to amuse itself. When she straightened, Duncan was holding out a $5 bill between two fingers, waving it like bait for an animal. For exceptional service, he announced. Maybe save up for some self-respect while you're at it. The laughter that erupted from table 14 felt like physical blows. Amara stood frozen, the breadstick in one hand, her dignity in tatters around her feet. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw their expensive meals in their smug faces. She wanted to walk out and never return, but she thought of her father at home, waiting for dinner she would bring from the restaurant kitchen. She thought of the physical therapy bills due next week. She thought of the reality that jobs like hers were not easily replaced, especially for someone without a degree or connections. So instead, she placed the breadstick on her tray, lifted the $5 bill from Duncan's fingers, and tucked it carefully into her apron pocket. Thank you, she whispered, the words tasting like ash. She walked toward the kitchen. Their laughter followed her like hunting dogs. She did not know that everything was about to change. She did not know that a man had just entered Sterling Heights restaurant, a man who would see what she could not, that true poverty was not measured in bank accounts, but in the emptiness of souls that found joy in cruelty. The kitchen doors swung shut behind her, muffling the sounds of the dining room. Amara leaned against the cold steel of a prep counter and allowed herself exactly 30 seconds to feel the weight of her humiliation. Then she straightened her shoulders, checked her reflection in a polished stockpot, and prepared to return. She had survived worse. She would survive this. Because survival was what she did best, even when it cost her everything. The entrance doors of Sterling Heights restaurant opened with a whisper of hydraulic precision. At 9:03 p.m. Cyrus Blackwood stepped inside, bringing with him an air of quiet authority that needed no announcement. He was 42 years old, tall, with broad shoulders that filled his navy suit jacket perfectly. His dark hair was touched with gray at the temples, and his eyes held the kind of depth that came from seeing both the worst and best of humanity. The hostess, Miranda, recognized him immediately, despite his unscheduled arrival. Her professional composure slipped for just a moment. Mr. Blackwood, we weren't expecting you this evening. Shall I prepare your usual table? Something near the center, please, Cyrus replied, his voice low and measured. I prefer to observe tonight. As Miranda led him through the dining room, conversations paused in ripples. Cyrus Blackwood was a legend in business circles, a man who had built an empire from nothing. He had started with a single food truck 20 years ago, sleeping in the vehicle between shifts. Now, he owned a network of restaurants, catering companies, and hospitality ventures across 6 states. What made him remarkable was not just his success, but his reputation for fairness and his unwillingness to tolerate cruelty in any form. He settled into his seat and accepted a menu he would not need, having memorized the offerings long ago. His attention was not on food. Something in the atmosphere felt wrong, discordant. Years of managing restaurants had given him an instinct for reading rooms, sensing when staff were uncomfortable or customers were problematic. Then he saw her, a young woman in a server's uniform, eating between tables with mechanical efficiency. Her posture was perfect but rigid, as if she were holding herself together through sheer willpower. Cyrus watched as she approached a table for men, and immediately his instincts sharpened. He recognized the body language of bullies at play. Amara reached table 14 carrying their entrees, each plate arranged with culinary precision. She set down the first dish in front of Sterling, who did not acknowledge her. Duncan received his steak with a dismissive wave. Preston ignored her completely. Garrett stared at his salmon as if inspecting it for flaws. "This looks overcooked," Garrett announced loudly, though he had not touched the food. "Do they not train kitchen staff properly here?" "I can have the chef prepare another, sir," Amara offered, her voice carefully neutral. "It will only take a few minutes." No, Sterling interrupted, with false magnanimity. "We wouldn't want you to work too hard. Though I suppose this is the kind of quality one gets when hiring people who couldn't succeed at anything else." Duncan picked up his knife, examining his reflection in the polished blade. "I've always wondered what drives someone to service work. Lack of ambition? Lack of intelligence? Or just accepting one's place in the natural order?" Cyrus felt his jaw tighten. He had heard this kind of talk before, the casual cruelty of people who believed wealth made them superior. His fingers drummed once against the tablecloth, then stilled. He was not a man who acted impulsively, but he was also not a man who ignored injustice. Amara stood silently, absorbing their words like blows. Cyrus could see the slight tremor in her hands, the way she held her breath to maintain composure. He recognized something in her stance, a desperate dignity that reminded him painfully of his own mother decades ago. Preston leaned back in his chair, addressing his companions while looking directly at Amara. "My father always said you can judge a society by how it treats its servants. I think we're doing quite well, providing employment for those who would otherwise be unemployable." "Indeed," Sterling agreed. "Though one does wonder if we're being too generous. Perhaps if we made these jobs less comfortable, people might be motivated to improve themselves." That was enough. Cyrus folded his napkin precisely, placed it beside his untouched menu, and stood. He moved through the dining room with purposeful strides, his presence commanding attention without effort. Conversation stopped as diners recognized him. Staff members straightened, suddenly alert. He stopped 3 feet from table 14. The 4 men looked up, their expressions shifting from amusement to confusion to dawning recognition. "Gentlemen," Cyrus said, his voice carrying across the sudden silence, "I apologize for interrupting your meal, but I couldn't help overhearing your conversation." Sterling recovered first, his face arranging itself into an oily smile. "Mr. Blackwood, what an unexpected honor. We were just discussing business philosophy, that what you call it?" Cyrus's tone remained pleasant, but something in his eyes made Sterling's smile falter. "It sounded more like you were demonstrating a complete lack of character." Duncan's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Preston straightened in his seat. Garrett's face flushed red. Cyrus turned to Amara, who stood frozen beside the table. "Would you mind giving us a moment? I need to discuss something with these gentlemen privately." Amara nodded mutely and retreated, her relief palpable. As she disappeared toward the kitchen, Cyrus pulled out the empty chair at table 14 and sat without invitation. The 4 men stared at him with varying degrees of alarm. "Let me tell you who I am," Cyrus began conversationally. "My name is Cyrus Blackwood. I own this restaurant, along with 47 others. I also sit on the boards of several investment firms and charitable foundations. More relevantly, I happen to know each of you by reputation." He looked at Sterling. "Sterling Whitmore, III. Your family's textile business has been seeking expansion capital for the past year. You submitted a proposal to Meridian Capital last month, a fund where I hold significant influence." Sterling's face went pale. Cyrus turned to Duncan. "Duncan Hayes, your hedge fund has been courting investors for a new Asia-focused portfolio. My investment group was considering a substantial commitment, Duncan's hands gripped the edge of the table. Preston Vale, Cyrus continued. Your tech startup needs second-round funding to avoid collapse. You've been pitching to everyone who will listen, including 3 venture capital firms where I have decision-making authority. Preston looked like he might be sick. Finally, Cyrus fixed his gaze on Garrett. And Garrett Fox, your family's restaurant chain is drowning in debt and desperately needs a bailout buyer. Interesting coincidence. Since I've been in acquisition talks with your father for 3 months, the silence at the table was absolute. Around them, the entire restaurant had stopped pretending not to listen. Staff members watched from strategic positions. Other diners leaned forward, sensing drama. Now, Cyrus said, his voice dropping lower but losing none of its edge. Here's what I find fascinating. You 4 have spent the evening tormenting a young woman who was simply doing her job. You threw food at her. You mocked her circumstances. You treated her as if she were less than human. And you did it for entertainment, Mr. Blackwood. Sterling began, his voice shaking slightly. I assure you we meant no real harm. It was just some harmless fun between colleagues. Harmless? Cyrus's eyebrow arched. Tell me, Sterling, would you consider it harmless if someone threw bread at your daughter? If someone mocked her struggles and placed money on her tray like she was a performing animal? Sterling had no answer. The problem with people like you, Cyrus continued, addressing all 4 men, is that you've never experienced real adversity. You were born into comfort and mistake it for superiority. You believe your bank accounts make you better than others, when in fact, they've simply insulated you from consequences. Duncan found his voice, desperate now. Mr. Blackwood, please understand. We've been drinking. We weren't thinking clearly. If we offended anyone, we sincerely apologize. You're apologizing because you're afraid of consequences, not because you understand why you were wrong. Cyrus stood, adjusting his cufflinks with deliberate precision. But let me help you understand. He pulled out his phone, typed briefly, then pocketed it again. I've just sent messages to my associates at Meridian Capital, Venture Growth Partners, and Silverton Investments. Your proposals will be declined. Your applications will be rejected. And your names will be quietly circulated among my network as examples of poor character. You can't do this, Garrett said, panic cracking his voice. You're destroying our careers over a misunderstanding. I'm not destroying anything, Cyrus corrected. Your own actions have consequences. I'm simply ensuring those consequences arrive. Consider it a valuable lesson in humility. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. That young woman you tormented? Her name is Amara Chen. She works 3 jobs to support her disabled father. She's more resourceful, more resilient, and more admirable than any of you will ever be. Remember her name, because it's the last thing you'll think about when you wonder where your careers went wrong. With that, Cyrus walked away from table 14, leaving 4 wealthy men staring at their now tasteless meals with expressions of absolute devastation. Their evening of cruel entertainment had just cost them everything they had been working toward. Money could not insulate them anymore. Power could not protect them. They had chosen the wrong target and the wrong witness. Cyrus found Amara in the kitchen, leaning against a counter with her eyes closed. She opened them as he approached, wariness and confusion warring in her expression. I apologize for creating a scene, he said gently, but I want you to know something. What those men did was wrong. Completely, inexcusably wrong. And you did nothing to deserve it. Amara's eyes filled with tears. She refused to let fall. You didn't have to do that. Now, they'll hate me even more. They won't have the opportunity, Cyrus assured her. Trust me on that. But more importantly, I want you to understand your worth. You show up every day. You work with dignity despite circumstances that would break most people. That matters more than any amount of inherited wealth. I just need this job, she whispered. I can't afford to lose it. You won't, Cyrus promised. In fact, the management here is about to receive new directives about protecting staff from abusive customers. Things are going to change. He handed her his business card, embossed with simple elegance. If you ever need anything, guidance, resources, or just someone who understands what it's like to start from nothing, call that number. No strings attached. No expectations. Just one person who escaped poverty helping another who deserves the same chance. Before she could respond, he walked away, leaving Amara holding a card that felt impossibly heavy with potential. She stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the sounds of cooking and conversation, and felt something she had not experienced in 3 years: hope. The morning after the incident at Sterling Heights, Duncan Hayes sat in his corner office overlooking the financial district, staring at his computer screen with growing horror. 3 emails had arrived before dawn, each one a variation of the same devastating message. Meridian Capital regretted to inform him that his hedge fund proposal had been declined. Silverton Investments was no longer considering his Asia portfolio. And most catastrophically, Blackwood Holdings had withdrawn its preliminary interest in his firm entirely. His assistant, Jennifer, knocked tentatively on his door. "Mr. Hayes, your 9 o'clock is here. The partners from Goldman want to discuss the quarterly projections." "Cancel it," Duncan said, without looking up. "Cancel everything to cross town." Sterling Whitmore III faced his own reckoning. His father, Sterling Jr., a man who had built the family textile empire through ruthless efficiency, sat across from him in the study of their estate. The older man's face was carved from disappointment. "Explain to me," Sterling Sr. said, with dangerous calm, "how you managed to insult Cyrus Blackwood's sensibilities so profoundly that he personally intervened to destroy opportunities we've been cultivating for months." "Father, it was a misunderstanding," Sterling attempted. "We were having dinner, and there was this waitress who a waitress." His father's voice could have frozen fire. "You jeopardized $200 million in financing because you couldn't resist tormenting a waitress. We didn't know Blackwood would care. We didn't know he'd even be there. That's precisely the problem." His father stood, buttoning his suit jacket with sharp, angry movements. "You behave as if your actions exist in a vacuum, as if wealth protects you from consequences. Cyrus Blackwood built everything he has from nothing. He started washing dishes, for God's sake. Did you really think he would tolerate watching you abuse someone in that position?" Sterling had no answer. His father left the study without another word, the door closing with quiet finality. Alone, Sterling pulled out his phone and found the group text with Duncan, Preston, and Garrett. Multiple messages had accumulated overnight, each one more panicked than the last. Preston Vale sat in the minimalist office of his failing tech startup, explaining to his co-founder that their second round of funding had evaporated. "Every firm we approached has suddenly gone cold. They won't return calls. They won't schedule meetings. It's like we've been blacklisted." His co-founder, a woman named Rachel who had invested her life savings into the company, stared at him with betrayal in her eyes. "What did you do, Preston? Companies don't get blacklisted for no reason." "It was nothing," Preston insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. "Just a misunderstanding at a restaurant. A misunderstanding that cost us our future." Rachel gathered her laptop and notes. "I'm done. Find another co-founder, one who doesn't destroy opportunities through sheer stupidity." She walked out, leaving Preston alone with the consequences of one evening's cruel entertainment. Garrett Fox faced perhaps the worst situation. His father, Victor Fox, had built a regional restaurant chain through decades of hard work, but recent expansion had left them overextended and vulnerable. Cyrus Blackwood's acquisition offer had been their lifeline, the difference between survival and bankruptcy. That offer was now withdrawn. "Explain it to me slowly," Victor said, his voice trembling with barely controlled rage. "Because I cannot fathom how you managed to offend the one person who could save this family business." Garrett sat across from his father in their corporate headquarters, feeling like a child called to account. "We were at Sterling Heights. There was a server who was being, I don't know, too slow or something. We were just joking around." "Joking around." His father repeated the phrase as if tasting poison. "You were cruel to a service worker. Cyrus Blackwood witnessed it. And now, we're facing bankruptcy because you couldn't control yourself for one evening." "I know it would matter," Garrett said weakly. "She was just a waitress." His father stood abruptly, the chair scraping against hardwood. "Get out of my office. Get out of this building." You're suspended from all decision-making authority effective immediately. I'll spend the next month trying to salvage what you destroyed in one night." Meanwhile, Amara woke in her small apartment to find her phone buzzing with messages. Her supervisor at the diner had called twice. The manager at Sterling Heights had left 3 voicemails. Even Marcus, the head chef she rarely spoke to, had texted asking if she was okay. She listened to the voicemails with growing confusion. The Sterling Heights message was from someone named Robert Chen, who identified himself as the new general manager. "Miss Chen, this is Robert from Sterling Heights. Mr. Blackwood has implemented new policies regarding customer behavior and staff protection. I'd like to meet with you this week to discuss your role moving forward and potential advancement opportunities. Please call at your earliest convenience." Advancement opportunities? Amara replayed the message twice, certain she had misheard. In 4 years of working at Sterling Heights, she had never been offered anything beyond basic employment. Now suddenly, there were opportunities? Her father wheeled into her room, his expression concerned. "Everything okay? You're up early." "I don't know," Amara admitted. "Something happened last night. Something strange and completely unexpected." She told him about the incident, about Cyrus Blackwood's intervention, about the business card that now sat on her nightstand like a promise or a threat. David Chen listened quietly, his weathered face thoughtful. "This man sounds either very dangerous or very rare," he said finally. "Someone with that much power who chooses to use it protecting a waitress. That's unusual. That's what scares me," Amara confessed. "Nobody helps for free. There has to be something he wants." "Maybe," her father agreed. "Or maybe he remembers being where you are now. Sometimes people who climb out of poverty become the cruelest because they want to forget. But sometimes they become the kindest because they cannot forget. You'll have to decide which kind he is." 3 days later, Amara sat in Robert Chen's office at Sterling Heights, her hands folded nervously in her lap. Robert was in his 50s, with kind eyes and an efficient demeanor. "Thank you for coming in. I'll get straight to the point. Mr. Blackwood has purchased Sterling Heights restaurant as part of his hospitality portfolio. He's implementing comprehensive policy changes focused on staff well-being and customer accountability." "I heard about the purchase," Amara said carefully. "But I don't understand what that has to do with me." "Everything," Robert replied. "You're being promoted to senior server with a substantial pay increase. You'll also have flexible scheduling to accommodate other commitments. Additionally, we're establishing a staff development fund, and you've been selected as one of the first recipients." Amara felt dizzy. "I don't understand. Why me?" "Because Mr. Blackwood specifically requested it." Robert slid a folder across his desk. "He's offered you a scholarship for continuing education, business courses, management training. Whatever aligns with your goals. No obligations, no strings attached. You simply have to decide if you want the opportunity." She opened the folder with shaking hands. The documents inside outlined a comprehensive support program, tuition coverage, flexible work schedules, mentorship opportunities. It was everything she had stopped allowing herself to dream about. "This is too much," she whispered. "I can't accept this." "Why not?" Robert's question was genuine. "You've worked here for 4 years without complaint. You've handled difficult customers with grace. You've earned respect through consistency and dedication. Mr. Blackwood invests in people he believes in. The question is, do you believe in yourself?" Amara left the office with the folder clutched against her chest, her mind spinning. Part of her wanted to refuse out of pride. Another part whispered that pride was a luxury she could not afford. But the largest part, the part she had been suppressing for years, awakened with desperate hunger. What if this was real? What if someone actually saw potential in her? What if she could build something beyond survival? That evening, she sat on the fire escape of her apartment building, watching the sun set over the city. The business card Cyrus had given her was in her pocket. She pulled it out, running her thumb over the embossed letters. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost declined. Then something made her answer. "Miss Chen?" The voice was familiar, calm and measured. "This is Cyrus Blackwood. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time, Mr. Blackwood." Amara managed, her heart suddenly racing. No, it's fine. I mean, you're fine. This time is fine. She heard amusement in his voice. I wanted to check if you'd met with Robert, and if you had any questions about the opportunities we discussed. I did meet with him. This is overwhelming. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything yet, Cyrus replied. Take time to think. But I want you to understand something, Amara. This isn't charity. I invest in people who demonstrate qualities worth investing in. You've shown resilience, dedication, and dignity under circumstances that would destroy most people. That's valuable. That's rare. All I'm doing is removing obstacles so your own abilities can flourish. Why? The question burst out before she could stop it. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why would you do this? There was a pause. When Cyrus spoke again, his voice carried old pain. Because 20 years ago, I was sleeping in my food truck, trying to build a business from nothing. A woman named Rosa Martinez, who owned a small cafe, started buying food from me every day. She didn't need to. She didn't even particularly like the food. But she saw someone trying and decided to help. She's gone now, died 5 years ago. I never got to repay her, so I pay it forward whenever I can. Amara felt tears on her cheeks. I don't know if I deserve this. That's not your decision to make, Cyrus said gently. I've made my investment. Now, you get to decide if you'll accept it. Think about it, Amara. Really think. And call me when you're ready. He hung up before she could respond. Amara sat on the fire escape as stars began appearing in the darkening sky, holding a phone that had just delivered the most important question of her life. Did she believe she deserved more than survival? Did she have the courage to reach for something beyond exhaustion and bills and endless shifts? Could she transform from invisible worker to someone with agency, with education, with possibilities? Inside the apartment, her father called that dinner was ready. Amara stood, folding the business card carefully back into her pocket. She had not decided yet, but for the first time in 3 years, she was allowing herself to imagine a future that looked different from her past, and that, perhaps, was the most dangerous and beautiful decision of all. 2 weeks passed before Amara made her decision. They were weeks filled with internal warfare, pride versus practicality, fear versus hope, the known misery of her current life versus the terrifying uncertainty of change. She worked her shifts, tended to her father, and lay awake at night staring at ceiling cracks she had memorized years ago. The turning point came on a Thursday afternoon. Amara had just finished her morning shift at the diner when her phone rang. The hospital, her father's physical therapist, was calling to inform her that they would need to reduce David's sessions from 3 times weekly to once due to unpaid balances. We've been patient, the administrator explained with practiced sympathy, but the outstanding amount is now over $6,000. We need to see payment or we'll have to adjust the treatment schedule. Amara sat in her car outside the diner, hands gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. $6,000 might as well have been $6 million. Even with her 3 jobs, even with careful budgeting, that amount was impossible. And without regular therapy, her father's condition would deteriorate. The progress he had made would reverse. She pulled out Cyrus Blackwood's card and stared at it for a long time. Then, before doubt could stop her, she dialed. Blackwood Holdings, Rebecca speaking. Hello, this is Amara Chen. I'm calling for Mr. Blackwood. He said I could reach him at this number, of course. Miss Chen, Mr. Blackwood mentioned you might call. Please hold. Less than 30 seconds later, Cyrus's voice came through. Amara, I'm glad you called. I've been thinking about your offer, she said, forcing steadiness into her voice. About the educational support and the flexible scheduling. I want to accept, but I need to understand the terms. What exactly do you expect from me? I expect you to pursue your goals with the same determination you've shown surviving impossible circumstances, Cyrus replied. That's all. No obligations beyond that. No requirements to work for my companies, though opportunities will exist if you want them. This is an investment in your potential, a contract for your future. Amara took a shaky breath. Why does this feel too good to be true? Because you've been conditioned to expect cruelty from people with power, Cyrus said gently. But not everyone with resources uses them as weapons. Some of us remember where we came from. I need help with something else too. The words came out in a rush. My father needs physical therapy. He's being dropped to 1 session per week because I can't pay. I know this is asking too much. But what's the outstanding balance? Cyrus interrupted. 6,000. But I can pay you back. I'll work extra shifts. It might take a while, but I promise, consider it handled. My assistant will contact the facility this afternoon. Your father will continue his full therapy schedule. Amara felt tears spilling down her cheeks. I can't let you just pay for everything. I have to contribute something. Then contribute by succeeding, Cyrus said firmly. Build the life you're capable of building. Help someone else when you're able. That's how you repay this. Not with money, but by passing the opportunity forward. After they hung up, Amara sat in her car and cried. Not sad tears, but the overwhelming release of years of pressure, of constantly fighting and never winning, of drowning while pretending to swim. For the first time since her father's accident, she felt like she could breathe fully. That evening, she sat with David and told him everything. He listened without interrupting, his expression moving through surprise, concern, and finally cautious joy. This man is either a saint or has ulterior motives we haven't seen yet, David said when she finished. But either way, you'd be foolish not to take the chance. Even if it doesn't work out perfectly, it's better than what you have now. I'm scared, Amara admitted. What if I'm not smart enough? What if I fail? Then you fail forward, her father replied. But staying here, working yourself to exhaustion just to survive, that's failing too. At least this way, you're failing towards something better. The next Monday, Amara enrolled in business marketing courses at the community college. She arranged her restaurant schedule around classes, working dinner shifts instead of doubles. The education fund Cyrus had established covered tuition, books, and supplies. For the first time in years, she walked onto a campus as a student rather than someone who used to be. Her first class was Introduction to Digital Marketing. The professor, a woman named Hannah Reeves, had a reputation for being demanding. Marketing is about understanding human psychology, Professor Reeves told the class on the first day. It's about seeing what people need before they know they need it. The best marketers are observers, strategists, and storytellers. Amara absorbed every word like someone starving. She had spent years observing people in restaurants, reading their moods, anticipating their needs. She had been practicing marketing fundamentals without realizing it. As weeks passed, she discovered something surprising. She was good at this. Not just competent, but genuinely skilled. Her analyses of marketing campaigns were insightful. Her project proposals showed creativity and strategic thinking. Professors noticed. Classmates sought her input on group projects. You have excellent instincts, Professor Reeves told her after class one day. Have you considered specializing in hospitality marketing? Your service industry background gives you insights most students lack. The suggestion planted a seed. Hospitality marketing. She knew that world intimately, understood its rhythms and challenges. Maybe her years of struggle had not been wasted. Maybe they had been preparation for exactly this. At Sterling Heights, the atmosphere had transformed completely. Robert Chen had implemented Cyrus's new policies rigorously. Customers who treated staff disrespectfully were politely asked to leave. Tips were pooled and distributed fairly. Break rooms were renovated. Mental health resources were made available. The message was clear. Staff members were valued, not disposable. One evening, Amara encountered an unexpected situation. A wealthy couple at table 8 began complaining loudly about their meal, their tone escalating to abuse. The woman threw a napkin at their server, a young man named Luis who had started working there recently. Before Robert could intervene, Amara stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said, calmly but firmly to the couple. "I'm a senior server here. Is there a problem I can help resolve?" "The problem," the man snarled, "is incompetent staff and mediocre food. This place has gone downhill." "I apologize you feel that way," Amara replied evenly. "However, Sterling Heights has a strict policy against mistreating staff members. I'll need to ask you to leave." The woman's face flushed with outrage. "Do you know who we are? Do you know how much money we spend here? I know your customers who are currently violating our code of conduct," Amara said. "No amount of money entitles anyone to abuse our team. Please settle your bill and leave." Robert appeared at her elbow, backing her up completely. "Miss Chen is correct. I'll process your payment at the host stand. You're no longer welcome here." After the couple left, sputtering threats about reviews and complaints, Luis approached Amara with gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you. I didn't know what to do." "You don't accept abuse," Amara told him. "Not from anyone. You're worth more than that." She realized as she spoke that she was giving advice she had only recently learned to follow herself. The girl who had stood silently while men threw bread at her would not recognize the woman she was becoming. That night, she received a text from an unknown number. "Heard about your handling of the situation at table 8 tonight. Well done. You're a natural leader." CB Cyrus Blackwood was apparently still keeping track of her progress. The thought should have felt intrusive, but instead it felt like having a guardian angel with impeccable timing and significant resources. 3 months into her coursework, Amara received an unexpected visitor at the restaurant. A man in his 50s, well-dressed, but with an air of genuine humility, asked to speak with her during her break. She met him on the terrace, wary but curious. "My name is Victor Fox," he introduced himself. "I believe you encountered my son, Garrett, several months ago under unfortunate circumstances." Amara's guard went up immediately. "I remember. I'm not here to make excuses for him," Victor said quickly. "I'm here to apologize. What he did was inexcusable. What all 4 of those men did was wrong. I've spent the past 3 months trying to teach my son about consequences and character. It's been a painful education for both of us." "Why are you telling me this?" Amara asked. "Because I failed as a father by raising someone who thought cruelty was acceptable," Victor replied. "And because I wanted you to know that sometimes the children of privilege learn important lessons, even if they learn them too late." Garrett has been volunteering at a homeless shelter, working alongside people he would have previously ignored. He's learning what humility actually means. Amara studied Victor's face, seeing genuine regret. "I appreciate you coming here. That takes courage." "It takes basic decency," Victor corrected. "Which I'm embarrassed to say wasn't my first instinct. But Cyrus Blackwood taught me something important. Power without compassion is just sophisticated cruelty. I'm trying to remember that now." After he left, Amara sat alone, processing the encounter. The ripples from that one night at Sterling Heights continued, spreading in unexpected directions. Men were being forced to examine their behavior. Systems were being restructured. A young woman who had been invisible was now visible, respected, and building towards something she had only dreamed about. That evening, as she studied marketing theory in her apartment while her father watched television nearby, Amara allowed herself a moment of honest reflection. She was exhausted. The combination of work, school, and family care left her constantly tired. But it was a different kind of tired than before. This exhaustion came from not just surviving. Her phone buzzed. A text from Professor Reeves. "Your campaign analysis was exceptional. Have you considered applying for the summer internship at Meridian Marketing? I think you'd be competitive." An internship at a real marketing firm. 6 months ago, that would have been unthinkable. Now, it felt possible, still terrifying, but possible. Amara responded, "I'd be interested. Thank you for thinking of me." As she set down her phone, she caught her reflection in the window. The woman looking back at her had the same face, but different eyes. Eyes that held hope alongside exhaustion, determination alongside fear. She was not transformed yet. The journey was far from over, but she was finally, truly moving forward. And that was enough. 5 months after that fateful evening at Sterling Heights restaurant, Amara stood in front of Meridian Marketing's glass tower downtown, smoothing her thrift store blazer and checking her reflection in the building's mirrored entrance. The internship interview was scheduled for 10 o'clock. She had prepared for days, rehearsing answers, researching the company, studying recent campaigns until she could recite them from memory. The receptionist directed her to the 7th floor. As the elevator climbed, Amara focused on breathing steadily. This was the opportunity Professor Reeves had encouraged her to pursue. A summer internship with one of the city's most respected marketing firms. Working with real clients on actual campaigns. The interview panel consisted of 3 people: James Park, the senior marketing director, Nina Torres, who headed digital strategy, and someone Amara had not expected to see. Cyrus Blackwood sat casually in the corner, observing but not participating. Her surprise must have shown, because James smiled. Mr. Blackwood serves on our advisory board. He occasionally sits in on interviews for our scholarship program candidates. Don't let him make you nervous. More nervous than I already am, you mean, Amara replied, then immediately regretted the honesty. But James and Nina both laughed, which relaxed the atmosphere slightly. The interview proceeded for 40 minutes. They asked about her coursework, her understanding of marketing principles, her experience in customer service. Amara spoke honestly about her background, about learning to read people in restaurants, about understanding customer psychology through years of observation. Tell me about a time you turned a negative customer experience into a positive one, Nina requested. Amara thought for a moment. Last month, we had a couple celebrating their anniversary. Their dinner was ruined when another table's child accidentally knocked over their wine. The parents were apologetic but overwhelmed. Instead of treating it as a disaster, I coordinated with the kitchen to remake their meal perfectly, moved them to a quieter table, and had the chef send out a complimentary dessert with an anniversary message. Then I convinced the manager to comp the family's meal too, because parents dealing with a difficult toddler deserved compassion, not judgment. Both tables left happy and tipped generously. That's problem solving and empathy combined, James noted, making a mark on his evaluation sheet. Exactly what we look for in client relations. Nina leaned forward. Your portfolio shows strong conceptual thinking. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Amara had prepared for this question, but she decided to answer truthfully rather than strategically. Honestly, 5 years ago I saw myself finishing college. Then life happened, and I thought I'd spend the rest of my days barely surviving. Now I'm allowing myself to dream again. In 5 years, I want to be someone who creates marketing strategies that actually connect with people, someone who understands both the business side and the human side, and someone who helps other people find their way out of impossible situations. The room went quiet. Nina and James exchanged glances. From the corner, Cyrus remained still, but Amara saw approval in his eyes. When can you start? James asked. Amara blinked. I'm sorry. The internship. It's yours if you want it. Paid position, 15 hours per week during summer semester. Potential to extend into fall. When can you start? Relief and disbelief crashed over her simultaneously. I can start whenever you need me. Next Monday, then. Welcome to Meridian Marketing, Amara. After the interview, Cyrus walked with her to the elevator. You handled that well. Authentic answers always land better than rehearsed ones. Did you have anything to do with this? Amara asked directly. The interview, the internship? I sit on the advisory board, but hiring decisions are entirely theirs, Cyrus replied. Your portfolio and interview earned you this position. I was just here to watch you succeed. The elevator doors opened. Before stepping inside, Amara turned to face him. Thank you for everything, for seeing me when I was invisible, for believing I could be more than circumstances allowed. I don't know how to repay that. I told you how, Cyrus said gently. Build your life, then help someone else build theirs. That's the only payment I want. The summer internship transformed into a permanent part-time position when fall semester began. Amara worked on real campaigns for hospitality clients, bringing insights from her service industry background that impressed both colleagues and customers. Her grades remained excellent. Her father's physical therapy continued showing progress. The constant exhaustion remained, but it felt purposeful now. One evening in late October, Amara was closing Sterling Heights when she noticed a young woman sitting alone in the dining room long after her shift should have ended. The woman wore a server's uniform from another restaurant, and her eyes held a familiar exhaustion. Amara approached carefully. "We're closing soon, but you're welcome to sit as long as you need." The woman looked up, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I just needed somewhere quiet before going home. My roommate's having people over, and I have an exam tomorrow, but can't afford coffee shop prices to study." Amara recognized herself in the stranger. "What are you studying?" "Nursing. I'm in my second year, but between work and school, I'm drowning. Tonight, a customer threw soup at me because it was too cold. My manager blamed me for upsetting them. I'm starting to think I should just quit school and focus on surviving." Amara sat down across from her. "What's your name?" "Iris Chen." "Wait, are you Amara Chen? The senior server everyone talks about?" "That's me. And I want to tell you something important, Iris. 6 months ago, wealthy men threw bread at me and mocked me for being poor. I thought my life would never be anything more than endless shifts and bills. But someone helped me see that surviving isn't the same as living. That education isn't a luxury, it's an investment in yourself." She pulled out her wallet and extracted a business card. Not Cyrus's card, but her own new card from Meridian Marketing. On the back, she wrote a name and number. "This is Robert Chen, the general manager here. He's always looking for good servers, and Sterling Heights has policies protecting staff from abusive customers. Call him tomorrow, mention my name. The pay is better, the environment is better, and the schedule is flexible for students." Iris took the card with trembling hands. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." "Because someone helped me when I needed it most," Amara said simply. "And because you remind me of who I was." Don't give up on nursing, Iris. The world needs compassionate healthcare workers who understand what struggle feels like. Your experience matters. 2 weeks later, Iris started working at Sterling Heights. She texted Amara a photo of her first paycheck with the message, "This changes everything. Thank you for seeing me." Amara showed the text to her father that evening. David smiled, pride evident in his expression. "You become the person you needed when you were at your lowest. That's the best kind of success." In December, Meridian Marketing offered Amara a full-time position upon graduation. The salary was more than she had earned from all 3 previous jobs combined. She accepted, then immediately enrolled in evening courses to finish her degree faster. On New Year's Eve, Sterling Heights hosted a private celebration for staff and select guests. Cyrus attended, spending most of the evening talking with servers and kitchen staff, learning their stories, offering guidance where welcome. When he found Amara near midnight, she was reviewing marketing materials for an upcoming campaign. "You're working on New Year's Eve," he observed. "I'm celebrating on New Year's Eve," she corrected. "Celebrating that I get to do work I love. That my father is healthy. That I'm not just surviving anymore." Cyrus raised his champagne glass. "To transformations, then. And to young women who refuse to let circumstances define them." Amara clinked her glass against his. "To people who use power to lift others instead of crushing them. The world needs more of those. The world is creating more of those," Cyrus replied, nodding toward Iris, who was laughing with other servers across the room. "Every person you help becomes someone who might help others. That's how change actually happens. Not through grand gestures, but through individual acts of recognition and respect." As midnight approached and the countdown began, Amara looked around the restaurant. She saw Luis, the server she had defended, now training new staff with patience and kindness. She saw Robert managing with fairness and compassion. She saw Iris studying flashcards during her break, refusing to give up on her nursing dreams. She saw the ripples of that one night spreading outward in ways she could never have imagined. The countdown reached 0. Champagne corks popped. People embraced and cheered. Amara stood quietly, feeling the weight of the past year settle into something solid and real. She had been humiliated, yes. She had been saved, perhaps. But most importantly, she had chosen to transform humiliation into determination and salvation into purpose. Her phone buzzed. A text from Professor Reeves. Happy New Year, Amara. I'm recommending you for the graduate program scholarship. Your application essay about dignity and service was the most powerful I've read in 20 years of teaching. Graduate school. Another impossibility becoming possible. Amara looked at Cyrus, who was watching her with quiet satisfaction. You knew, didn't you? That night at table 14. You knew I was more than what those men saw. I knew you were surviving against odds that would break most people, Cyrus said. I knew that kind of strength, once properly supported, becomes unstoppable. Everything else you've done yourself. As the celebration continued around them, Amara thought about the girl who had stood frozen while men laughed at her poverty. That girl still existed. Inside her, would always exist. A reminder of where she had been, and why she fought so hard to move forward. But she was no longer defined by that moment. She had become someone who turned pain into purpose, humiliation into hunger for justice, and desperation into determination. The wealthy men had laughed at her poverty. The billionaire had walked in and changed the trajectory of her story. But in the end, Amara had changed herself. And that transformation was creating new transformations in others. She raised her glass one more time. This time to herself. To the girl who survived. To the woman she was becoming. To the future she was building. One choice. One opportunity. One act of kindness at a time. Outside, fireworks exploded across the winter sky, painting the darkness with temporary light. Inside, Amara stood surrounded by people who saw her worth, doing work that mattered, building a life that felt like hers. She had risen from the ashes, and she would spend the rest of her life making sure others could rise too.